one more time. Here we go.
Okay.
Praying that it's going to work.
Okay.
Okay, it appears to be functioning. Okay, and cutting and pasting, and here we go, folks. Tweeted. I'm going to begin recording.
Okay.
This is Slash Filmcast episode 592. In 3, 2, 1. Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I'm David Chen, and with me are
Devendra Hardawar.
And Jeff Kanata.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Today on the podcast, we are going to be discussing some world events over the course of the last few days that have happened since the Slash Filmcast After Dark that we published last week.
What could you be talking about? Nothing has happened.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. And then moving on into discussing some what we've been watching before concluding with an in-depth review that is going to be a review of His House, the newest film that is available right now on Netflix. It's a horror movie. Has been getting a ton of great critical acclaim. It's by Remy Weeks, who wrote
His first film.
Wrote and directed the film. So that's what we're going to be talking about today on the Slash Filmcast. But before we get into any of that, I do want to announce a slight change in programming yet again. There was remember when there was a good 1 month period when I would say we're going to be reviewing X next week, and then I just kept changing it much to.
And then we got a single tweet from a single person that threw everything out of whack. Yeah, I remember that.
Much to the chagrin of everyone who listens, as well as the people on this podcast. Well, so we are going to be reviewing His House, which is what we promised last week, so no deviation there. But I also promised last week a After Dark episode about The Queen's Gambit, which is now on Netflix. Unfortunately, not all of us could finish The Queen's Gambit. It's like many episodes, and we had to watch His House, and we also had other things to deal with this week as well. So we will be talking about The Queen's Gambit during what we've been watching this week. It won't be the
I watched more television this week than I have all year, and yet somehow I've watched less television this week than normal, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we had other things on TV to watch. So Queen's Gambit, we will be talking about it. It's going to be during the what we've been watching. However, we do have a special After Dark planned for you that is a discussion of the Brandon Cronenberg film Possessor. Brandon Cronenberg. Why can't I pronounce Cronenberg?
Easy for you to say.
Cronenberg. Okay. You know how when you say the word enough and it loses its meaning? Anyway,
Roads.
The new Brandon Cronenberg film, Possessor. Possessor. Which is out right now on video on demand. And Devendra and I watched it. Jeff refused to. And so we'll be talking about it.
I didn't know it was a requirement. It became a requirement about 4 minutes ago.
Well, also a couple weeks ago when we discussed it, I think your exact words were "fuck off, David." No,
when I
suggested
that does sound like me.
That does sound like
me. No way in hell I'm watching this movie.
No way in hell I'm watching this.
That was the week when we decided to watch Ted Lasso instead. Which,
that's right. That's right.
No regrets.
Which is
no
similar.
Regrets.
Which is similar thematically to Possessor. I should point out.
It's true. Actually,
it's all about kind of inhabiting a space that's not familiar to you. They're both Possessor and Ted Lasso. They're basically the same thing. You basically have already watched Possessor if you've seen Ted Lasso, Jeff.
True.
Exactly.
One has ultra violence, one doesn't.
So we're going to be talking about Possessor as the After Dark instead of Queen's Gambit, and patrons will get that first at patreon.com/filmpodcast. And starting in 2021, patreon.com/filmpodcast will be the only way you'll be able to get our special After Dark episodes. So be sure to sign up soon to make sure you don't miss anything.
2021 starting to seem like a real good year, you guys.
Yeah. I mean, what else is there to look forward to? Come on.
So when we recorded our After Dark that was published on the main feed last week, we hadn't even gotten the confirmation that Joe Biden had won the election from all the major news networks, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I just want to ask you guys, I literally spent all day Saturday celebrating with my wife, with
Yeah.
friends,
How
driving to
great
their.
was it that it was a Saturday? Like, just that alone, it just feels like, you
In the
know,
beginning of a Saturday, so you could
we're
have the whole day to really
yeah, things
celebrate.
are really
Yeah.
turning a corner. It just feels like it's all lining up. And previously on 2020, that would have been it would have happened at the least convenient time for everyone. It just
Mhm.
seems like it was great. It was great. It was like a
I,
little
I
Saturday gift.
I didn't know that people would spontaneously start dancing in the streets in jubilation. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't
I
sure it
would
would
predict
happen.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Like somebody
I thought there's a
toppled a
possibility.
Saddam Hussein statue or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really was the reaction of a country that had kind of toppled a regime or unseated a dictator or like almost like a war had ended, right? Like
Yeah.
it's almost like that magnitude of reaction of just
It is the Onion headline of our long national nightmare is over, basically. Except, yeah, they went with a funnier story this time around, which was, of course, the Onion. It's great.
I did tweet out on Saturday that most of us always thought the end of Return of the Jedi was cheesy, until it happened for real.
yes.
I mean, there were no teddy bears from what I saw, but
I
yeah,
mean,
a
otherwise.
lot of similarities. Like, I guess I'm curious about you
West
guys. Like,
Hollywood.
tell me about your Saturdays. Did you do anything special? Like, what was your Saturday like for you? Because for me, it was a blur. It
Mhm.
was like, my wife literally went out, bought like cupcakes, and then went around distributing them to friends, and then like celebrating with them on the side.
That's great. That's how
Socially
you do
distanced
it.
on the sidewalk and everything. So it was all very safe, but she wanted to like spread the love and spread the pure euphoric emotions. Curious, like what Saturday was like for you guys. Was it just any old day, or was it different in any way?
I mean, I
good setup.
distinctly remember preparing lunch for my daughter, and my wife was just basically asleep for most of Saturday because she didn't sleep the previous night because babies. But yeah, so I had lunch with my daughter. I put her down for a nap. I just was hooked on the news. Then I raked the leaves. Then I cleaned the bathrooms, and I just felt myself being so much more productive because I didn't have the weight of an absolute idiot being in charge of this country. And then yeah, we went to the park and kind of stumbled into a Biden celebration, and that was pretty great. So we
Did you miss
something
being
at
in
the
New
end.
York this weekend, Devindra? Because
Oh yeah,
my
hell
sense
yeah!
is the
This is like
celebration in New
the
York was like real intense.
this is why you want to be in New York,
Right.
because
To be
it is
there
that
when
New York
stuff like
moment
this
of just
happens, yeah.
things. Yeah, the
It did make
spontaneous
me
celebration. Mhm.
there was a teeny tiny part of me, as much as I love the yub nub of it all, there was a teeny tiny part of me that was like, let's all stay a little farther away from each other, please, as
Yeah.
we celebrate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be a wet
mean-
blanket, but it just worries me.
Well,
It seemed all right, but also like something I think we've learned over the past couple of months is cameras really lie with depth of field. So even if people are like celebrating outside appropriately from each other, it's sometimes hard to tell. So yeah.
I think what was like more upsetting to me than a lot of the footage of the celebrations, many of which like people had masks on,
Yep.
was I attempted to watch SNL this week. I don't know if you guys did the same thing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
attempted to
I
watch it
tried.
live, and
you
the
talking about Notre
Notre
Dame?
Dame game ended.
Yeah.
And as someone on Twitter put it, like, I didn't know that this game would turn into a snuff film because basically you had like tens of thousands of people, many of them seemingly maskless, just rushing the field at the
Oh
end.
my
And it was
God.
like it was
Yeah.
outdoors, and maybe some of them had masks on, and it is
Yeah.
outdoors, but it just felt like they're like, unlike with the celebrations where like theoretically you could kind of space out, a lot of the time many of their objective was to be closer together. They're like rushing towards each other on the
Yeah.
field. Anyway,
Pandemic's
basically,
still happening, guys.
pandemic's still
Yeah.
happening. Please be safe when you're celebrating anything, whether it be Notre Dame game. I don't even know who won that game, to be honest with you.
Notre Dame
America won.
beat
Okay.
the number one team
Yeah.
in the country.
Got
Yeah,
it.
awesome.
And then or the election of a candidate you're a fan of. Please be safe, listeners. Please wear a
I
mask.
have to say, by the way, like I especially miss being in New York because I walked outside in my neighborhood, which is it's like a little progressive suburb, absolute silence. And I was so disappointed by basically everybody in my suburb. I did get to talk to my neighbor, and we just had like a long talk about like yes, this feels great. He also doesn't know who else to trust around the neighborhood because we're in Georgia. So, it's stuff like that. But we had some time to celebrate. So I dig that. What did you do, Jeff?
My wife was doing the same thing that sounds like your wife was doing, Dave, which is she was like I want to go and I want to buy things and I want to bring them to people that had Biden Harris things in their front yard. I don't know them. I just want to knock on their door and give it to them.
Yep.
And she was like crying all day, and we were just we got our kids donuts in the morning, and we just was like, it felt
They're
like
this is the best day ever. What's happening?
Yeah, my kids were like this.
I will say
Go ahead.
I was unprepared for the emotion I would experience. I honestly, I didn't, because I didn't think it would make such a big difference. And it was seeing Fox News call it that really made me feel like it's really over. Like go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, just the fact that like we talked on the podcast on the After Dark about how like we seemingly live in different realities, but like Fox News is a window into the other reality. OAN is another window into that reality. But like Fox News calling
like
it,
a
it's
sewer
like
grate.
Right?
That one's like a sewer grate into the.
It's like you'll float too. No, but there's a certain relief in seeing Fox News say, because it's like, oh, this is a news organization, quote unquote, that like people on that side actually respect. Although it's being kind of torn apart right now by internecine warfare, but like. But so just seeing Fox News call it, I was like, it's real. I can actually celebrate at least for one day, which is about how long the euphoria lasted.
Well, but the real tears for me started when Kamala Harris took the stage and started speaking in front of that awesome like drive-in movie theater scene. But even before we get there, guys, I do not want to overlook or give short shrift to the greatest moment in 2020. The single greatest moment in the entire year, possibly one of the greatest comedic moments in the history of man. I am not exaggerating. That is not hyperbole. I believe that the Four Seasons landscaping moment it is better than most scripted comedies.
I don't think Aaron Sorkin could have pulled that off. It is too good. It's just like
so there's no bottom to the joy that I feel. There's no the well just continues to. It is so perfect in every sense. Like the fact, like every new bit of information I discover about this event, it keeps making you feel like we've reached comedic perfection, and then you go, oh no, it was also sandwiched between a adult bookstore specializing in lube and a crematorium.
Yeah,
and that's about right.
That's and then fitting. Then you find out that the event was delayed by the exact amount of time it takes to drive from the actual Four Seasons Hotel in Philadelphia to Four Seasons landscaping. The idea that they did not cancel, that they just went ahead.
They keep doubling down on it too. Like they were like, oh yeah, great Americans shop at Four Seasons lawn, right?
Yeah. So you're referring to the fact that Rudy Giuliani held a press conference on Saturday morning, right around the time, by the way, that the election was called.
He was informed. He was informed that Fox News called the election while he was in the middle of the press conference. Right? And it was a shock to him.
President Trump had tweeted out, hey, press conference today at the Four Seasons, and then later corrected that tweet saying, actually, Four Seasons Total Landscaping, which is a fairly nondescript landscaping company out in the suburbs, it seems, of Philadelphia.
The level of incompetence to get the wrong Four Seasons booked, right? And when you step through it in your mind, what must have happened, what had to have happened for that all to take place, is the funniest thing that my brain can process. Like, someone made a call to the wrong Four Seasons. the Four Seasons Total Landscaping office fielded the call and said, "Sure, have your event here. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
This
We'll
is
make
why
it
they named
happen."
themselves Four Seasons. They planned for this moment, you know.
Dude, it is
Yeah.
so funny. And the fact that then once they realized they had the wrong Four Seasons, they didn't just cancel it. All they had to do was just go, there was a mix-up. We will be rescheduling our press conference. But no, Giuliani drives to the wrong Four Seasons. They set up the most pathetic, sad little stage in front of this like biohazard warning sign. It is, guys, there's no end. Like every detail makes it better. Every single thing you find out about this event makes it better. It's the perfect, like if you saw it in a movie, you'd be like, I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch.
Well,
You
on
know?
that note, I mean, just imagine getting pranked by Borat and that being the second most humiliating thing that happened to you in the last few weeks.
That's so true.
It's it's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible.
So I just didn't want to. I know we want to talk about the election itself, but like I almost think it's a shame that the election was called on the same day that happened because
we would have been talking about this for like a week, basically, right?
everyone should have been talking about that constantly. Like that should have been the news story, and it's it's still so great, but
it's sadly been relegated to just a footnote now, Jeff.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Rather than I mean, well, to be fair, I've seen a lot of news stories framing it as the campaign began on that escalator and is
Right.
maybe it ended in the parking lot of a Four Seasons Total Landscaping. So.
Yeah.
I think my favorite meme was that one. It was like the Star Trek episode. You know the Star Trek episode where like they can all speak with metaphors. Did you guys know what I'm talking about? The Star Trek Next Generation.
I don't think so.
There's a I'm probably going to do a very bad job of explaining it, but there's Star Trek: The Next Generation season 5 episode 2. There's an episode called Darmok. Jeff, you'd actually appreciate this.
I must have seen it. I've seen all of them, but I don't recall it.
The Enterprise encounters a civilization which communicates only via metaphors. So
Beautiful.
there's a character, and he'll say things like "Shaka" when the walls fell, and that's his way of explaining, like, hey, there was an event in the past where like Shaka was there and like the walls fell and it made him feel a certain way, and that's what he's trying to communicate to you. So he doesn't communicate normally; he communicates only using metaphors, and it's usually like a location and event. Right, a location and an event, and I saw like a screenshot of the guy from Darmok, and it's like Four Seasons Total Landscaping when the campaign ended, and all the Star Trek TNG fans out there will get that joke. But anyway, That was my favorite meme that came out of this.
There's so many good ones. One of my favorites was somebody tweeted, "Ritz-Carlton Plumbing, our day will come soon."
All right. Well,
so
anyway, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in a second to talk a little bit more about what happened this week. All right. So before we move on, I just want to ask you guys. So Jeff, you were saying about your wife going on and
yes.
doing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. No. I mean, it was a pretty wonderful day, and the fact that we got the call so early meant that it just felt like this monkey. I'm a big San Francisco 49ers fan, and I was a huge fan in the 90s when Steve Young and Jerry Rice and Ricky Watters won the Super Bowl. And Steve Young had taken over the team from Joe Montana, who won 4 Super Bowls and was, the greatest quarterback of all time. And, he was in the shadow of Joe Montana for a long time, and people expected a championship in San Francisco. And there's this very, very famous shot of him on the sidelines when they were destroying in 94, I believe it was, when they were destroying the San Diego Chargers. And there's a shot of him on the sidelines, and he like leans over to somebody and he points to his back and he's like, "Can you just pull this monkey off?" And and he's like miming, and they're laughing and having a good time. And he was like saying, and he had been carrying this weight on his back for so long, and it was finally removed. And I kept thinking that all day on Saturday, that feeling that like there had been this burden, this weight, this heaviness that had been on my back for 4 years, and it just felt like a lightness had returned, even if only symbolically for now. It's just felt like, oh my God, there's going to be a time where I don't have to fucking pay attention to what this idiot says. Like it's going to be so nice that he's just irrelevant now, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that will still be a problem about him and his followers, and there's going to be a lot of shit that we'll still have to deal with, from that mouth, I'm sure. But
like he's not going anywhere, unfortunately, and a lot of people are saying he is still the most powerful, Republican voice. So I don't know what that's going to be.
He doesn't speak for our country anymore, and I think that he doesn't represent me anymore. And for that, I felt a lightness and a relief. Sure. It was a relief that washed over me all day long. It was pretty powerful.
It was that Lord of the Rings thing where the king, right, who was cursed, just all of a sudden comes back to life. It was that for an entire country.
So I guess I'm curious, like, how do you guys feel today? Because, I had a day of wonderful celebration that then gave way to, intense concern about what's happening. And I actually
these
honestly,
next 3 months are going to be bad. Yeah.
I actually honestly think, I was tweeting about this today, I actually honestly think that, like, I need to just unplug from it, because before with the election, there's actually utility to staying plugged in. Like it motivated me to do more to help with the election, whether it be giving money, whether it be phone banking, text banking. Like there was actually like there's actually some purpose to being online. Now everything that's playing out now, there's nothing I can do to impact its outcome. If something terrible happens and there's protests, like definitely I would get involved, but like other than that, it's just this stuff has to all be figured out by people that like I have no influence over at this point, right?
It does. You can still help Georgia, by the way, for you.
Right? Yeah. No. I fully intend to. I fully intend to be involved in the Georgia runoff election in some way, in terms of volunteering. But separate than that, it's like I can't stop like Bill Barr from saying declaring things that are really, really dangerous. For instance, so it's just like. I feel like I gotta just kind of take a step back from what's happening.
But what's good is sort of just like seeing the news come out of the Biden campaign. It's like, hey guys, we have a plan that's wielded by experts and science.
People that aren't related to Joe. Yeah, people that aren't related to Joe Biden. Which is just like, hey, you can take issue with who is on the panel. That's fine. Like, criticize it. That's cool. But like, at least it's a plan. At least it's something to get us out of this mess. Yeah. So anyway,
that's heartened to me is just I know you say that you had one day and then you were sort of back feeling a dread.
Yeah.
I really haven't. I mean, there is some sense of, he is not relinquishing. He's not, conceding. But I honestly think like there's nothing he can do. I've turned a corner on feeling like he has any leverage at this point, because the world has decided he's done. The world understands, and the world gets it. And there's going to be this small group of people that are going to whine and complain, and maybe he'll have to be marched out of there. So be it. But I think he can cause a lot of havoc and cause a lot of stuff. I'm definitely concerned about that. I still, as I said in our After Dark last week, I still feel a real worry that there are some people that are going to cause violence in his name. But I am heartened, and I'm still in this place of feeling relief because of what Devindra said, because every day since there's been news of like, oh, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden sat down with a bunch of experts, and they just said they're going to, there's going to be these thousands of people who are going to be assigned to do source tracing and find out, like adults
the things
are
we
in
should
the
have been
room
doing since
again.
March. Yeah.
It's like, just, I'm going to quibble with the specifics like I have in the past with all administrations. There's been things that I agree with and disagree with strongly, and that's all going to happen. But for now, it's just like, there's just a level of competence
Mm-hmm.
a base level of competence that has me so relieved, and I'm gonna revel in that for a little while.
I think that's reasonable to do. And, it was nice to watch Kamala and Joe Biden speak on Saturday night and just remember what it's like when there would be a president who didn't rely on hatred and some of our more baser instincts, right, to rile
Yeah.
people up.
For sure.
Someone
People who
trying.
can actually serve as examples, and have to say it feels a lot better to have a child in this world right now, where
Oof,
I
you
can
said
point
it.
to the vice president and be like, that could be you one day, or
Yeah.
you could be in a position like that, or you could be president one day. And my daughter, who is Puerto Rican and of Indian descent too, because my family is from South America, technically, it's all very complicated. But my daughter is many things. Kamala Harris is many things, and America's many things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to really relishing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, glad to hear you guys are in a better place than when we recorded. It's so fascinating to
Yeah.
me, by the way, that like we all, as we said on Thursday night when we recorded the After Dark, is like we all kind of knew that it was going to be called for Joe Biden at any
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
But the difference between knowing it's probably going to be called and then it actually happening was like night and day, like in terms of
Yes.
the feeling, the reaction, So
Yeah, and also the way that it was called was unambiguous, and
Yeah.
like you said,
Mhm.
Fox News called it, right?
Yep, yep.
Everybody called it. There was no, and then all the calls started coming in from the international leaders congratulating, and it just felt
Yeah.
like, oh, at a certain point, it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter if he's like, no, I'm not leaving. And
Mhm.
I don't think I really grokked that before.
right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I just think it was you felt like he somehow through sheer force of will could throw a monkey wrench into the plans, but the way it played out, it was a snowball rolling down a hill, and I just don't think there's any stopping it. It's
Yeah.
that's the truth. That's the reality that has taken place. So,
On the one hand,
yeah.
I think you are correct in the sense that on January 21st or whenever the inauguration happens, like whatever that date is, the military is going to start taking its orders from
Mhm.
Joe Biden, and I assume Joe Biden, or someone, whoever they believe
Right.
the winner to be. The Secret Service is going to start protecting someone as the new president of the United States. And it's like, those people will make those decisions, and they'll probably make the decision based on who won the election.
Right.
So I agree that like there's certain forces, like world leaders will start treating Joe Biden as the president of the United States. Like there's certain things that you cannot stop just because you say that they're not the case, right? And so
Right.
I agree with you. On the other hand, I want to pause and reflect. Like Farhad Manji tweeted this, and many other people have tweeted something like this. But he said, "quote This is one of those if it happened elsewhere, but really, if a president refused to accept election results, gets the full backing of his party, fires the defense secretary to get a more pliable one, and his attorney general sends out a memo about voter fraud, that's not good." End quote. And
Right.
if this happened in another country, we would be calling it a coup. Right. And
Right.
The fact that it's happening here, I think people want to normalize it. They want to say, oh, everything's fine. Everything's okay. It's going to be okay. But like, we should say this is the first time in the history of the country where the sitting president has refused to accept the results of the election. And even though I think you're probably right, it's probably going to all be okay. We should just pause and acknowledge the fact that this is like an unprecedented situation and understand how dangerous it is. So
Yeah.
Th-
I'm
you're
not
so
worried
right.
about this, by the way. Like, I am not worried about this. I'm worried about like the thing. I tweeted a great article by Zeynep Tufekci, who is one of my favorite writers, like during the pandemic and even before. She's an amazing sociologist. And she wrote this thing at the Atlantic, which was just like the next American dictator, will be a lot more competent.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
that's the thing we really have to watch out for. So 2024 and beyond, I don't know what's going to happen. I will say the icing on the cake of everything on Saturday was Trump was golfing when the race was called.
it shows
of
that he's not
course.
really taking this challenge too seriously, I think.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
but he can still cause a lot of damage, but he's just not really focusing his full attention on it. Anyway, Jeff, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I think you're absolutely right to still be concerned, and we should all be. There's a part of me that says the less we take this fucko seriously, the less power he has, but he still does have some power for 3 months. The other thing that's so crazy when you step back and really contextualize it is what you said, which is the first time in American history a president has refused to accept the election results and refused to concede. The craziest fucking thing is we all knew that would happen
Yep.
no matter what.
Right.
It
right.
didn't matter what happened in the election. It like the actual events didn't cause the unwillingness to accept the results. The unwillingness to accept the results predated the events that he's unwilling to accept. Like, it's crazy. There's no situation in which he loses and he would have accepted the results.
Yeah.
And that alone, like, it's just so bonkers to me that people are like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no evidence that he would have taken that would have made him think that the election was legitimate. It is, and that alone should invalidate what he's saying. Like, just that, we all knew it was going to happen. It's crazy.
I do appreciate Kurt Mega in the chat room. We're broadcasting live right now. It says he has a good friend in the military who has said many very powerful conservative military leaders have already vowed to support Biden and are committed to a transfer of power. So
that's good.
That does reassure. You know, broadcasting live right now on the /Homecast in this YouTube chat room, it does reassure me just a little bit. So I am glad about that. And yeah, President Trump has done not very much to endear himself to the military. We should point that out.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway. Glad you guys are feeling better. I'm still very worried, but I'm going to try to pay less attention, at least until I need to participate in the Georgia election, and also until I need to take to the streets. Until then, I'm going to try to just tune this stuff out because I just don't think there's anything I can do about it. So
keep yourself sane, and that goes for everybody.
Yeah, goes for everybody. Stay safe.
Healthy.
Yeah. But hope you are. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm sorry. One last little button. I'm just very. I'm looking forward to Devindra being able to give us a blow by blow, play by play of being in the heart of the. You know, like you are in it, man. You are at ground zero.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Who'd have thought, Devindra, that you would be moving to the flashpoint of the country in terms of this election?
There's been a lot happening in Georgia for a while, guys. But it is funny because, like, when I moved here, everyone was like, "Why would you move there?" And now it's like, "Oh, I see."
It's on the verge of flipping blue. I mean, arguably already has, but you know, depending on how the next few weeks play out. So, anyway,
it's exciting. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on. Before we get to the next topic, also want to acknowledge that Alex Trebek passed away at the age of 80 this week. Very, very sad. And I think I'd always appreciated his work on Jeopardy. Devindra, you put this item on the show notes. What did Alex,
I think
Alex
the
Trebek
man
do
is
to
a
you?
legend. Like who on TV is Alex Trebek right now? Like who has that same sort of role? Who has that same sort of longevity on television? People love this man. There were a lot of great memes going around after his death. You know, his death was announced. It was just him, like people just saying how much he meant to them. There was a great one of somebody saying like he learned English while watching Jeopardy, you know, on his grandfather's lap. So he was able to thank Alex Trebek in person. So I love the man. He always stood for a intelligence, but like a wry wit. I do think all the celebrity Jeopardy stuff from SNL was based on the fact that this guy was kind of spunky at times. I always appreciated that, even as a kid.
Suffered no fools.
Yeah. And in 2011, I'll say one of my favorite tech memories, just covering tech. I got to go up to the IBM headquarters in New York. I forget which town that is, but they were doing a mock Jeopardy thing with IBM Watson. So they were going to announce like the results that day. So we just got to see some of it done live, and he was there just doing it. And he seemed to really enjoy the process. And he just seemed like such a professional. Like here's a guy who's had such a storied career, and now he's watching a computer, an AI computer play his game and just really going with it. So I don't know. I love that. I love the man, and I'm sad to see him go.
Indeed.
A patron saint of geeks.
Yes.
He really is. I think before, he did it for 40 years.
Yeah.
How long was Jeopardy on?
I think it was around 37 seasons.
Yeah. So, I mean, this predates nerddom being mainstream. And I think that there was a lot of nerddom that was celebrated in that show before it was ever a thing, before it was ever cool, before it was cool to know stuff on that show. It was cool to be a nerd. a geek.
Yeah.
And I was never a big Jeopardy fan, but I always related to that aspect of it. And I
Mhm.
think he personified that. He singularly personified that respect for intelligence and knowledge and being articulate, being precise. Like the precision of that show came from him and his precision. And
Mhm.
it's something I will always respect.
It's a tragic death, particularly because one of the things that I feel we have started becoming overcome with over the last few years is like this idea of anti-intellectualism,
Yeah.
Mhm.
growing disrespect for expertise. Just look at how this pandemic has been handled, right? And uh, the idea, the concept of Alex Trebek was that like facts are often knowable, and it's important to get them right. You know, I appreciated like when I think of Jeopardy, I think of like all how precise they were, right? How like sometimes like they would acknowledge getting things wrong, or you know when
Yeah.
somebody guessed something that was like arguably correct, they'd be like, oh yeah, we got to acknowledge it, that might be correct. You know, there's this idea of like it matters to get it right, and I appreciated that about Alex Trebek and about Jeopardy. So thanks for all the memories, Alex, and rest in peace. Let's move on. Let's do like one quick what we've been watching. How about you, Jeff? Why don't we start with you? Wolf of Snow Hollow, right? Is that what you've been watching this week?
Yeah, I rented Wolf of Snow Hollow on Amazon Prime streaming, and this is I didn't know you were going to me quite so quickly. Hang on a second.
This is Jim Cummings' new film, right?
Jim Cummings, who
Love Jim Cummings.
what
Yeah.
a fascinating actor this dude is. Not
Mhm.
and a creator really. I mean, this is written, directed by Jim Cummings. His previous film Thunder Road. Have either of you seen that?
I keep meaning to. I keep hearing it's amazing. I think Jim Cummings has said he is willing to come on the Slash Filmcast at some point. You know,
Wow.
if
Once
I
you
don't
see his movie.
I don't
Yeah.
remember if that Twitter interaction happened, but it feels like it did. Anyway, so I keep meaning to see it, but I until this date have not seen it yet.
Thunder Road is I watched it a few months ago as the pandemic was worsening. As I don't remember exactly what week it was, but it was a terrible week for me. As there's been so many terrible weeks in 2020 for me personally, and I think for the world. But I have gone through a lot of personal family stuff that's been really hard, and we've had a lot of health issues in my family, and it's been a very, very, very difficult year and continues to be, quite frankly. But that film was really hard for me to watch at that time. I need to revisit it, but I honestly like it is heart wrenching, and it is watching a man go through self destruction, basically.
Mhm.
Um, and so I don't think I appreciated it. I just don't think I enjoyed it. And it was a lot more to do with the time that I was seeing it. Wolf of Snow Hollow is his follow up to that film, and it actually treads some of the same ground. Clearly, this guy Jim Cummings, extremely interesting performer. He knows what he does well, and he writes characters and shoots characters that showcase what he's so good at. And a lot of what he's good at is portraying a person who's spiraling out of control. And it's fascinating. He does it in such a quirky, interesting, offbeat way that you can't take your eyes off it. It's funny and heart-wrenching all at the same time. And in both of those films, that's what you're seeing the central character do is completely unravel. And the first movie, Thunder Road, that I saw, is really while very funny at times, very wry, very dark humor, but very funny. Um, it is just it's real. It's played in a very real way in the real world, and it felt, it's about a cop. It was like all of these things that were happening in the real world to me. Like it was hard to watch. I had a hard time watching it. The Wolf of Snow Hollow, I actually prefer. I think it's, for me, a more accessible movie, and I enjoyed it a ton. I think The Wolf of Snow Hollow is an easy recommendation. A movie I think it's hard to compare to any other movie. It is so unique and so different and tonally walks this fascinating line because again, it is heartbreaking and real and grounded and melancholy, but it's also about a freaking werewolf. You know, like it's like about this like science fiction fantasy horror premise. And I really, really, really want to talk spoilers with you guys about this movie. Maybe you guys can watch it at some point and we can do a after dark
Sure.
segment on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think what this movie does with its premise, or almost in spite of its premise, is really special. I mean, it's this really broad, cool genre premise, but it almost like ignores it for it's about this guy going crazy. I mean, having a hard time, having a real breakdown. Against the backdrop of this fascinating genre premise. Like the premise itself would be an awesome movie, and then it layers on this other level and almost is more interested in that other level. And where it goes is pretty awesome. I really enjoyed this movie. It's unlike, I'm having a hard time comparing it. I mean, I guess the easy comparison is like a Coen Brothers kind of situation, you know, like a Fargo. But
Right.
I think it really carves out its own unique take, its own unique tone and feel. It's full. The comparison to the Coen Brothers comes from the fact that it's full of quirky, interesting, offbeat characters. Everybody you meet in this world is unusual. You know, it is memorable. Robert Forster, the late Robert Forster, is in this movie and is great. The movie is dedicated to his memory. It's such a loss. That guy was doing such interesting work at the end of his life. There's a number of really great character actors in this movie, and the discussions, the way the movie is edited is fascinating. Like it'll intersperse two scenes together that take place completely different times with the same characters. You know, you'll have cops like investigating a crime scene interspersed with the crime itself happening, and it's fascinating to see that. I mean, it's like happening like shot, like very fast. It's just a really interesting, unique movie that might be a little, I mean, I know I have a friend who thinks it's a little too close to Thunder Road tonally, but I prefer it. I actually prefer it. And I think it's just because it's this genre film, you are brought into the experience in I think a smoother, more, less frictiony way. At least I was. But I highly recommend The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
All right. Let's move on to what else are we watching this week. Devindra, what have you watched this week?
Sure. I checked out a couple episodes of Blood of Zeus, which is the new Netflix anime series. It's actually it's Western anime, but so it's not like a Japanese production or anything. This is a show about a commoner living in ancient Greece who, quickly discovers he has some powers, and it's related to Zeus because that guy was all over the place, just really, really having kids all over. This is a show. It reminds me a lot of the Castlevania show that hit Netflix because it's an adult animation show. It's very violent. There's a lot of gore and nudity and everything in it. It's a show that's just about an ongoing war between the gods, basically. So if you're into Greek mythology, I think it's kind of interesting there, especially like now that everybody's playing Hades. It's kind of a fun time to explore this, and I really like the art style. It reminds me of like if you've ever seen like Greek mosaics or art that we have from back then, or just even the statues. It has a very specific style that looks good. My only quibble with the show is that the animation is just kind of not there. There's a point in the first episode where I think a wagon or a horse was just walking by, and it looked like 5 frames of just a thing, just like moving in stop motion. It's not good. I have, especially after like just rewatching Legend of Korra, I have certain standards I need for my animated shows. This doesn't quite hit it, but I think the voice acting is good. It's an interesting story that's telling, so I'll probably finish it. And I'm into this stuff. I like Greek mythology, and I feel like it's doing some interesting things. Funny enough, this is a show by the Parlapanides brothers. They wrote Immortals, so this is actually their first or their second, attempt at doing something within this mythological framework. I don't. We reviewed that movie. I don't think I hated it,
Was
but it
that
was just
Henry
kind of a
Henry
nothing burger.
Cavill? Was that the one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Tarzan movie.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, it was
so
okay. It was
they're
all
still
right.
doing it.
It was all right. It was all right. Not a bad film.
Yeah. So I think if you're into anime, if you're into this mythology, it's probably worth watching. These guys also wrote the Death Note movie that was terrible. So, that didn't work out well for them, but this is all right.
All right. Well, folks.
Hey, Dave?
Yep, go ahead.
Can I just say one more thing about Wolf of Snow Hollow?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. I only watched it because of #/tag. And I want to thank there's at least 4 people that recommended Wolf of Snow Hollow on #/tag. And I don't want to let that go by. I find it to be such a useful resource. If you have any suggestions for us or for your fellow /filmcast listeners, use that #/tag. I sit down when I'm deciding what to watch and I read through all of them. I have several in my list of ones that I haven't gotten to yet that people have recommended. I so appreciate people embracing that hashtag. So use #/tag. I think it's one of the best things we've ever done is come up with that and put that into use because I found it to be so useful. So thank you, everybody.
It's very helpful.
I did see a rather graphic image of Batman and Joker in the #/tag because
don't do that. It's not cool.
Well, it's because they're using it.
Just send that to Dave directly.
They're using that as a /fiction tag, FYI. So just be wary, okay? It's not a rated G
one
hashtag.
Anomaly, right?
Yeah. It's not a rated, but it's not a rated G hashtag. But I agree with you, Jeff. It's very useful, and thank you.
It was clean when we started. We did do some testing.
Yeah.
I feel like we popularized it. Now somebody's trying to take it over.
Yeah, they're trying to commandeer. All right. Anyway. Hey, by the way, Devindra, did you have a chance to check out How To with John Wilson by any chance?
I did. I saw the first episode. It is something. Like I really dig the vibe. I have not seen the what was it? The
scaffolding episode?
The scaffolding episode.
Yeah.
I have not seen that yet. I'm digging it. My wife watched it with me, and mostly it was just like it felt like just wandering around New York and people watching in New York. So it felt good in that respect. Yeah.
All right. It sounds like it wasn't really your thing, but I'm glad you gave it a shot.
I like it. I like it. My wife is just kind of, it's not her style of comedy. And also the PSA at the end of that episode is just like graphic shots of him taking his cat's poop and flushing it. People, don't flush your cat poop. Don't flush your cat poop because our water filtration systems cannot process that. So you're putting poison in the water supply, people.
All right. Well, let's move on. Guys, let's talk about The Queen's Gambit. This is the Netflix miniseries in which orphaned chess prodigy Beth Harmon struggles with addiction in a quest to become the greatest chess player in the world during the Cold War era. So I have heard amazing things about this miniseries, which is based on Walter Tevis's 1983 novel of the same name. And lots of people I respect just going off on Twitter about how amazing this is. On Letterboxd, movies that I like, literally in my top 10 movies of all time, are get a 3.3, 3.5 out of 5-star average. Right? That's Letterboxd. Like when I look at Letterboxd, like my favorite things of all time are like 3.3, 3.5, 3.6 out of 5. Queen's Gambit, 4.4 stars out of 5 average. Right? So I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah,
this
must be perfect.
This thing's gotta be good. Also, I love chess movies. Searching for Bobby Fischer. There's a bunch of other chess movies that have. So I love chess movies. So I'm like, okay, slam dunk, guys. We're gonna review this Queen's Gambit thing, and it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. And so we had slotted it for the After Dark today. Of course, we haven't finished it, so we're just gonna talk about this during what we've been watching. We'll talk about most of the episodes. But we will not talk about the ending or the very last episode. And trouble began almost immediately in the first episode when basically the character of Beth Harmon is played by two different actors, I should say. And they gave the younger version of Beth Harmon the exact same haircut as the old version, at one point in the movie, and
That's
it's
how
like
you know who it is.
yeah, it's just like oh, it's the show is not trusting you to know who this person
You
is.
really took that
despite
personally. Wow.
It's fine.
think-
It just
She
went.
just really like that haircut. Like, come on.
In any case,
I
let
think
me ask.
you're skimming over the first indicator,
Yeah.
which was a text message that you may have received at one point.
Yeah, tell me
that
about the
you,
text message, Jeff.
systematically ignored.
Tell me about the text message, Jeff. Tell me about the text
From
message.
me saying, "Hey guys, are we sure about this one? I'm 2 episodes in. Are we sure about this one?" To which Dave replied, "I am committed to watching this. I'm committed to reviewing this."
You
To
did make
which-
this your own bed here, Dave. Yeah.
To which I immediately assumed, oh, Dave has watched a significant amount of this and is into it, digging it.
Which
Because,
was
you know,
yeah. Because why would I
he's
say
gotta
something
be
like
way ahead
that?
of me.
Why would I say
Yes.
something like that unless I was already into it?
got to be way ahead of me.
Gotta
if
be way ahead.
I'm,
Gotta
you
be
know,
way
if I'm only 2 episodes in, maybe Dave clearly no regrets on his part.
Yes.
You know, he's got more empirical evidence than I do. So I must be the one. I'm the crazy one. See, that's what I'm thinking.
So
Uh-huh.
Jeff later discovered I hadn't even started the series at the time I sent that text.
Not a single minute of watching
It's
it.
really going off the hype.
So,
here.
so Jeff,
Yeah.
why did you not feel compelled to keep watching after a couple episodes?
Well, I don't want to step on your toes here. You were going. I just wanted to bring in my text message, but I
You were warned, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
But
you were
Je-
saying the first warning sign. I was like,
Yeah.
there was a little bit of an earlier warning sign there, bud.
Yep.
But-
Yeah. So, but yeah, no. But like, why you didn't feel compelled to finish it? So I'm just curious, like, what was behind it?
I did not feel compelled to finish it. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Like you, I have people that I love and trust, whose opinion I hold in high regard, who are saying this is one of the best things of the year. It is a masterpiece, and I don't know what they're watching. I mean, I think
I am completely baffled by the reaction to this
Yeah.
series.
It's
It's
fine.
like
It's
the Will
fine.
You
Ferrell
guys
like
are just shitting
it-
on the love of the
no,
people
no,
right
it's
now.
it's like the Will
yeah.
Ferrell like, am I taking crazy pills? Like, is there
Yeah.
because people I made a kind of snarky remark about this on Twitter on Saturday, and the intensity with which people defended this show, it was like just like wow, like. But for me, I feel almost exactly the same way you do, Jeff. It's like I don't hate it or anything, but
Yeah.
it is at best mildly silly, about like this show that I feel it doesn't do any one thing particularly well.
I agree.
There are some great things, like from a storytelling perspective. There are some great aspects of the show. The production values are incredible. It looks beautiful. Love the cinematography. Anya Taylor-Joy, super talented. Like
She's incredible.
I've loved
She
her
really
since
is.
The Witch. Like this is a fairly good showcase of her talents. But
And
the
really,
character,
really, her eyes.
Yes,
because it's her eyes.
she has
over
incredible
the
eyes,
chessboard. It's
incredible
just
eyes.
Like that's it. Yeah.
the character of Beth Harmon is virtually a cipher. Like there is almost nothing there, in my opinion. I struggle for 5 out of 7 episodes to come up with any adjectives to describe this character. And there are some like kind of interesting moments towards the end of the show when you actually start to see the cost of her excellence, right? The cost of this pursuit of greatness for her. But it feels very mild. Speaking and very mild is a great way of describing the entire show, in my opinion, because like
Yeah.
she encounters very few obstacles as far as I can tell. Like I was watching this, we watched this in our COVID bubble, and my wife was just kept remarking upon how everyone is so nice to her. Like every time you think something terrible is about to happen to her, it's like, nope, that person is just being nice to her. It's just their wind up for being nice to her
Yeah.
and treating her really nicely.
It's kind of refreshing, to be honest. But yeah.
One of the things that I was going to say when we were going to do this as a full thing, I was going to start with the things I liked about the show. And one of the things that I really thought was incredible in the first 2 episodes was, first of all, the sound design of pieces hitting a chessboard
Mhm.
is great. It's like a sledgehammer every time they place a piece on a board. And there are a number of chess games in the early part of this series where, to the show's credit, they don't explain anything. And you just get all of the context of what's happening through the facial expressions of silent players. You are watching a silently played chess game where, and I was like, you know what? A lesser show, a lesser film, a lesser piece would feel compelled to have some sort of announcer explaining what's happening as it goes.
Well,
And
well,
then
they kind of do
literally,
a bit of the A Beautiful Mind thing, but not quite. Like not enough to distract from just the intensity of the play, which I think
well,
is the key.
but then
Yeah.
literally like episode 3, they do that exact thing. Like literally have an announcer
Yeah.
explain to you what's happening and why it's important. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I was so with you for those 2 episodes, and you just let us like understand the back and forth of the play through the players reacting to the board. Like it was so interesting. It was such a cool, confident way to do that. And then like by episode 3, it's like, oh, she's trying the
Yeah.
Phoenix approach. It's not working. You know, it's like, oh,
Pretty good.
You completely abandoned
Pretty good
that.
impression of the
It-
announcer.
but
Not bad at all.
like let me just say, by that point, like she accelerates very quickly to be, you know, a countrywide champion and is playing in international games. So I do think it's sort of like it is doing the sports announcer voice thing, except sports announcer for chess. Like that was the whole point of it. So it never felt like it's trying to explain chess to me. It's more like this is a big deal because this guy, his job is to announce the chess game like a sportscaster. That's how I read it. At least.
Yeah, but I
Well-
think he's there functionally in the show to
Sure.
handhold the audience through the drama. And I just appreciated that the show didn't rely on that earlier. Like it was confident enough to know that, oh, I'm invested in what these characters are doing because I see what it means to them. You know,
Mhm.
there's a thing I think I've said on the show before that really affected me as a young actor when I was in acting school. I had a class in which we had to do this exercise where we had to invent a game and play it without explaining the rules to the audience. We literally just
Mhm.
like, you come up with a rule like, oh, I have to stand up when you sit down and you have to lie down when I stand up, whatever. I mean, that's an established game, but whatever. It doesn't matter what the rules were. They were
Mhm.
arbitrary rules. We had to know the rules, and then we had to play the game in an attempt to win. And the lesson that we were to learn from that, and I did take away from it, was that it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you are committed to it and invested in it. The audience will be invested in it too because they're trying to figure out, they're watching you be invested, and interested is interesting. And I thought, oh my gosh, this show is an example of that. It's like perfect. It believes that too. And then of course it just abandons it. So.
Let me just say, because
yeah.
it sounds like you guys are just extremely disappointed by the show, which it's to me, it's just like delightful. And it is sort of I guess it's kind of a refreshing thing to see now because it doesn't feel like anything else that's in the streaming landscape. Like you could tell this is adapted from a novel because I think it's the plot kind of moves the way novel would. Like characters get introduced really quickly and abandoned super quickly too. Like you could tell a lot's happening, but I think it just feels different. I will say this up front. I love Scott Frank. I love him as a writer. I love him as a director. You know, he's done. He did The Lookout, which is a movie that's kind of hard to find right now, but I really enjoyed it. The Joseph Gordon-Levitt thing. But this guy wrote Out of Sight. This guy wrote Minority Report. You know, so he has like a really good eye for for thrillers and noir type things. And I feel like this was a really interesting portrait of a young girl who suffered extreme loss at a young age, and I didn't think I'd be into it really within the first episode, but she's orphaned like pretty much immediately as the show begins, and she just suffers through like I know there aren't many challenges in the games, but her life is not great because apparently at this point, you know, people gave kids tranquilizers so they didn't act up, and it just seemed like I was really connected with this character because I wanted her to succeed. This poor orphan who has nobody, who has very little, and isn't much of a talker, but she has chess, and I feel like that hook was enough for me. So I'm about 5 episodes in right now, and I have to say it is a very nice escape from election shit and just the state of the world and everything happening. It's a show that's, you know, the only important thing is chess. it's chess and it's Beth Harmon and how she's playing it, and I appreciate that. So I think that's part of the appeal right now. It is a perfect escape because it's globetrotting a bit. She's traveling all over the place and playing in places with crowded people, in major conventions and whatnot. It just seems so we're living vicariously through her in a way. Where if this came out last year, I feel like it would just be forgotten almost immediately.
I want to point out I love Scott Frank as well because he went to my college. He's alma mater, Gaucho,
Yeah.
UCSB.
There was one episode in the show that I actually really appreciated out of the 7 episodes, and that was episode 5. She has an encounter with Harry Beltic, who is introduced early on as like one of the chess champions in Kentucky. And I won't reveal what happens, but I'll just say that it's the only episode that I felt like truly struggled with or grappled with what it means to pursue excellence and what the cost of that is. And that's when I felt like the show was really about something, was episode 5. And so I really appreciated that. But I'm glad you're enjoying it, Devindra. I'm glad obviously millions of people out there really, really love this show. I was ready, and I was ready to watch a show where like Anya Taylor-Joy goes in and kicks ass in a man's world. Like I really, I love chess movies. I'm predisposed to love this kind of thing, but I found it to be a crushing disappointment. And also, I thought the chess was handled badly. Like I think that it's hard to make chess cinematic, and I don't think they really cracked it in this movie. I think that even think about it. I think a good comparison is like watching like a football game. You know what I'm saying? Or Ted Lasso being a great example. They don't show you the whole game or anything like that, right? It wouldn't make sense. They barely explain any of the rules to you. So I'm fine with all that stuff. But like they at least show you the highlights, right? They at least show you like here's a critical moment in this game when something important needs to happen, and you as the audience grasp what the stakes are. And this show, The Queen's Gambit, I don't feel like trusts the audience that much with anything, but especially with the chess. They don't trust you to know what the chess is or what it means or what the different moves mean, because the show never slows down enough to show you enough of what's happening to really grok it. Now, I know people have gone on YouTube and they've recreated all the chess games, and like they're actually really interesting for those who want to dig in, but it's really not part of the experience of watching the show itself, in my opinion. So I was disappointed with how the chess was played out as well. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Queen's Gambit. Jeff, it's like I don't know if you had anything to add, but sounds like you and I thought this was okay, not great.
Yep. Yeah, I that's what I would say. It's fine. It's
fine.
not. It wasn't a bad show by any stretch of the imagination, but I totally agree with what you said. Like it doesn't feel like it's about anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There are moments that I thoroughly enjoyed. There are moments that are very enjoyable. There are cinematic things that happen, but boy, it feels glacially slow.
Yes.
And it doesn't. There's no verve. There's no spark of life in it for me. And despite some wonderful performances and some interesting moments, it just didn't add up to much.
But we're glad that all of you out there enjoy it.
Yes.
That's the
Save
Queen. So no need to write to us about why you loved it. No, I mean, you can if you want. We might read some of them on the air. But that is our thoughts on The Queen's Gambit. And you can find it right now on Netflix. All right, folks. Before we get to our review, let's get to weekly plugs. All right, Weekly Plugs is the part of the show each week where we plug something we've been involved with making or that we just really want to support. This week, I'll plug a post-election episode of Culturally Relevant that I recorded with my wife this week. It's just us reflecting on everything that's happened in the course of the last week. It's basically kind of what we talked about in the first part of this podcast, but for 80 minutes. So if you want to listen to that, then check out Culturally Relevant at culturallyrelevantshow.com or wherever your podcast can be downloaded. Or if you feel, hey, I listened to this podcast for the movies, how dare you talk about politics, then don't check this out. But hopefully you are interested. So that's my weekly plug. Devindra, how about you?
If they listen to this show not for the politics, they haven't gotten this far.
Yes, hopefully.
We spent the first half hour talking about it.
They've already shut off the show and discussed, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It's totally fine.
Devindra.
Yeah, I did a live stream of some Xbox Series X gameplay last week with my colleague Jessica Condit. We had a lot of fun. We haven't really done much live streaming in Engadget, but I think I want to bring it back, especially for new systems like this. So go check that out. That's on our YouTube channel, and yeah, let me know if you liked it. I need to really work on my streaming setup over here, but we do have like a good video production team, so it's a new challenge for them and I really enjoyed doing it. I also want to shout out, keep an eye on Gadget for, I don't know, probably something happening with Apple and MacBooks this week because it is the rumored switch where they're moving away from Intel chips to their own chips, and
I don't think it's
I
rumored.
predict
I
it'll
think
probably,
I think they said that it was
yeah,
going to happen. So this is probably going to
it'll
be
be,
the
yeah, that's
realization of
true.
it. Yeah.
They did say that, but yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen. So I predict it's gonna be very interesting.
Yeah.
If you're a hardware geek, this is gonna be a fantastic week to pay attention.
I am psyched about what the news is going to be tomorrow, and I'm actually psyched about Devindra's coverage as well. I've been following Devindra's coverage of the new systems. He's been putting out some cool videos over at Engadget, so check those out. How about you,
Thanks.
Jeff Kanata?
Yeah, it is. It's a very fun time for video games. We don't have new consoles, only once every 5 or 6 years. So I'll take this opportunity to plug my video game podcast as well, DLC, which you can find at 5by5.tv/DLC. I think I mentioned it last week that we had Alex Amancio on, who it was fascinating, interesting developer. We got another Alex this last week, another Alex who's a developer. So we had back-to-back Alex episodes. It's a theme for November. I'm gonna see if I can find another Alex next week. But this episode was great too. Alex Sulman from DICE LA, he no longer works there, but for years has been in the industry. He brought some really fascinating perspectives to the new consoles from a developer's point of view, what he's excited about for the future. It's a great talk, and I also did my review of Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is a great follow-up to the first Spider-Man game, which was a great game. Yeah. So check that out, 5by5.tv/DLC.
And as usual, we will link to all weekly plugs in the show notes for this podcast, so check them out there. We also want to thank the people who donated to the podcast this week via PayPal. You can go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/filmcast if you want to support the podcast. Thanks to Jamie Scott and thanks to Matt Quo from Everett, Washington. Really appreciate your donations, folks. Of course, never donate if it in any way causes you hardship of any kind. But if you want to throw some bucks our way, paypal.me/filmcast is a great way to do it. You can also support us for free by going to Apple Podcasts, leaving a star rating. It just takes a few seconds. And of course, we have a Patreon now. You can support us at patreon.com/filmpodcast and get some bonus content, some ad-free episodes that way as well. Thanks to the over 900 people that have supported us on Patreon over the course of the last month. Yeah, it's
so
incredible.
Close to 1,000, you guys.
So close to 1,000. There is a thing where people kind of mark rewards when people reach certain goals, like milestones, right? Like a certain number of dollars per month or a certain number of patrons. I was wondering, like, maybe we should put together like some kind of goal for 1,000 patrons.
Sure,
that's a great idea.
Not sure what it would be. A lot of people might suggest like a Firefly review. That's not going to happen at 1,000 patrons. It might happen at at 2,000. Yeah, it might happen.
Never going to happen. It will. The heat death of the universe will need to happen first for this.
I think 2,000 patrons, we could do it. I think Dave will do it at 2,000.
Yeah, I would do it at 2,000.
To be honest, that's a tiny fraction of the total number of people who
it's a tiny
fraction to us right now.
This is not a joke. At 3,000 patrons, or not 3,000, but like maybe like 3,500 patrons, I really feel like I could probably make some like career changes that would let me make more content, produce more things on the internet. Which again,
are you saying if people pay us for things, they get more things?
It's true. It's true. But yeah, it's like, and that, by the way, would still be like a fairly small fraction of people who listen to the podcast. So the Patreon is really kind of significant influence in how we make things. And so we really appreciate everyone that's contributed over there. But yeah.
I had a shower thought, as a thought when I was in the shower, and I was just kind of musing on the election, and that we set records. I guess there was the most people who voted since 1900, or the largest percentage of voters since
turnout, yes, since 1900.
Yeah,
yep.
And we had like 170 million people that voted, and I was thinking like, 170 million Americans voted. And what tiny fraction of that I would need to listen to the things that I make for it to completely change my life. You know what I mean? Like, for it to just absolutely change my life, what a tiny drop in that bucket it would take. I mean, I'm very grateful for the size of the audience that I and we have. Don't get me wrong, but man, what I wouldn't give for just the tiniest.
I mean, you're just asking
tiniest
for
percentage.
1% of the world's population to listen to your stuff, Jeff.
No,
you know?
not even world though. It's just America. Yeah, but I mean, world.
You're
would be
just
nice,
asking
but
for
it would-
1%. What does a
How-
guy
how
need
one
to do to
half
get
of 1%?
1% of the world's population to listen to his stuff? You know, what's the guy
What
got to
would I
do? Seriously,
I mean,
what
how
more
many-
do you
how
want,
many-
universe?
Dave, how many fucking limericks do I need to write? You know.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone who supported us, and we're going to continue to roll out those After Dark episodes through the new year. So look forward to that. Let's get to our review of His House. Sorry, I didn't pull the His House trailer in advance, so Beatty, you're going to have to put this in here. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, we're back in. That was from the trailer for His House, the newest film by Remy Weeks, written and directed by him. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. A refugee couple makes a harrowing escape from war-torn South Sudan, but then they struggle to adjust to their new life in an English town that has an evil lurking beneath the surface. So I'm going to ask you guys, let's start with Devindra. What did you think of this movie? You'd watched this a few weeks ago. You'd recommended it
Yes.
for us
Yep,
to review on
yep.
the podcast.
I
Overall
did, and,
thoughts on His House?
I absolutely loved it. I love horror movies that just aim for something a little different. And I think when I first heard about this movie, people were talking about it as sort of a haunted house movie. And it kind of is, but it's actually, you know, I'm not going to say too much before we get into spoilers, but it's a movie that's more about grief and trauma and being a refugee in an indifferent country. Really, like there's a point in this movie where the the first half of this movie is just this couple trying to get used to life, in a random English town. It's not even like, it's not a big place. It's kind of gray, it's kind of dull, but I appreciate seeing how they try to make a life there. The lead guy, by the way, played by Sope Derisu, who stars in Gangs of London and kicks tremendous amounts of ass in that show. So it is a great year for this guy. But the man Boyle, he draws a map for his wife to just tell her, okay, walk down this street, turn here. Here's how you get to the store, or you get to the church or something. It is just an interesting look at how strangers in a new land try to make it work, even when everyone around them seems completely unwelcoming in a way. It's weird because this is a story about refugees in Britain, and through luck of the draw, they have a whole house to themselves, kind of in a rundown section of the city, but still a house, and they've had nothing. So it seems like it's a good thing. But so much of this movie is devoted to just the indignities and the injustice that they face, just trying to live. And then, oh, by the way, it's terrifying because they're haunted by something that's in the house, and that is slowly clawing away at their psyches. We'll have a lot to talk about in spoilers, but I have to say, I love this movie. It's an extraordinary debut and a truly effective horror movie. Like, it's the sort of thing that gets underneath your bones because it's so harrowing.
All right, Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on His House?
Well, Dave, I guess my thoughts on Hill House are best summed up
His,
in the form of a limerick.
Hill House. I think you mean His
What
House.
did I say?
You said Hill House.
Oh, I watched
It's
the
the other
wrong
house.
thing. I watched.
You
The-
watched the Netflix original series The Haunting of Hill House instead?
Yeah, I think I played Betrayal on House on the Hill. Unfortunately, the board game. Oh, man,
wow.
What? That's on me.
The Haunting
That's
of
just on
Bly
me.
Manor. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
All right, here comes the limerick. Like the best genre films before, this movie's a grim metaphor. As more is revealed, the onion is peeled, finding trauma that can't be ignored.
Well
Ooh,
done, Jeff.
that's
That's
good.
just
I
a
like-
solid limerick. It's just
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not
Well played.
flashy, it's not flashy but it still obviously displays a great deal of skill and sophistication. So
Well,
nicely
you know,
done.
if anybody's listening wants their own, cameo.com/Jeff Canada. That's all I'm saying.
Is it?
Um,
Is it Gambit?
That's all I'm saying.
Jeff Canada?
Cameo.com/Jeff Canada.
Jeff Canada?
I think Devendra used the absolute right word when he said harrowing. This is a harrowing movie. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is, by all measure, a horror film, but it also kind of doesn't feel like a horror film to me. It feels like a drama. It feels like a movie, just delving into the trauma of these characters, and
Mm-hmm.
It manifests that trauma in a horrific symbol, right? But what you're really experiencing, I didn't even. It wasn't even like scary to me. It was just hard, and I was emotionally invested in these people's plight more than I was terrified by what was lurking in their house or around every corner or whatever. It's really skillful filmmaking, and the imagery is so incredible. There are scenes of, you know, sort of dreamlike imagery. The way this house, I mean, there's lots of, you know, monster in a house movies. There's lots of There's a Thing Behind the Walls movies, you know. The way this, in fact, we did another one this year that I didn't think was very good. What was the one about the
Relic?
mom? Yes.
Relic.
Yeah.
Which I quite enjoyed, you know. So,
Yes, I know
yeah.
both of you did. I didn't care for it, but I think this movie does what that movie wanted to do so much better than it did. And I just love how just visually and texturally
Mm-hmm.
it delivers that feeling of this house being being sort of at war with the place that you are in, you know, being battling against your own environment. It's so tangible in this movie, and you feel the texture of it. The performances are excellent. It is dark and it is harrowing. It really, the more you find out, and we'll talk about it in spoilers, but the more you find out about these people and what they went through, the darker it gets. But it is, you know, it's an extraordinary movie and an extraordinary debut for a first-time filmmaker.
It's so confident. It's so
It's
confident.
very
just-
confident.
yeah.
Yes. And it's a movie that doesn't pull its punches. You know, it really knows what it's trying to say, and it stands there and makes you take it. And that's pretty impressive. So I think very highly of this movie. I can't say I liked it watching it. It put me through the ringer. It really did. It was depressing and rough to watch, but, you know, in the best way. It's a very good movie.
Yeah, I echo all of your thoughts, both of you. I really like this movie. I think it's really well done, and it tells a story that we don't really see told that often in films, but is actually very relevant, especially in America. I know the film doesn't take place in America, but the idea of refugees trying to build a new life for themselves, leaving a world of horror behind, and finding new horrors in the place where they arrive, new alienation, people resistant to their presence. I think it's very relevant, and like what movies like this remind us of is like the journey that everyone has had to go through is something that you are likely completely unaware of, unfamiliar with, and you
Yeah.
need to respect that. You know, you need to.
And also, like,
yeah.
no matter where you go, you can't really escape everything.
Yeah,
You know, you
so true.
bring part of yourself and all of the horrors that you've ever been through. There's, you know, you talk about making a fresh start. It's not completely fresh, you know?
Agreed. Also, before we move to spoilers, just a quick shout out for Wunmi Masaku, who plays
So
the
good,
female
yeah.
lead in this movie. She was also great in Lovecraft Country. She's one of the leads in Lovecraft Country, and she is very, very talented. I'm looking forward to seeing her in more things. She also, I believe she's British as well. So, like, she's kind of had an American accent for Lovecraft Country and kind of had a Sudanese accent for this movie, and it felt completely authentic to me. You know, it didn't feel like somebody doing an accent. It felt like this person is chameleon-like, transforming into these different roles. I think she's great. So, I really appreciated the movie. We have more to discuss, so let's do it right now in spoilers for His House.
Now you're looking for the secret.
You're gonna see this coming.
No,
But you won't find it because, of course,
you're not gonna see this coming.
you're not really looking.
I have been puzzling over how it works.
You don't really want to work it out.
Who's in the box?
I have been dying to tell you. I want to tell you my secret now.
You want to be fooled.
All right, let's talk about spoilers. One of the things I really appreciated about this film, it has a technique that I appreciate, where basically you think you're watching a scene play out, right? And then the camera will cut to a tight shot of the scene, and then it will slowly pull back, and then you realize that you're actually in a completely different location. And it uses that kind of effect like several times throughout the course of the film. Like there's this moment when Sope's character is eating, and then it pulls back, and you see that he's actually like eating in the middle of the water, and you realize it's in the middle of a dream. That was very effective. Or a scene when you see the two leads together, and it pulls back, and you think she's kind of in her hometown and everything's fine, but it pulls back, and you realize like everyone that she knows has been slaughtered. And I thought it was a very like haunting thing to do, haunting experience. So I really appreciated that kind of technique. But one of the big things about, and actually I want to say, spoilers for the Babadook coming up. So how about this? I'm going to spoil the Babadook at some point. So I'll give you a few more seconds before I do that. But until then, Jeff Kanata, I think some of the things you were talking about, you were referring to like what these characters have been through. The big shock, of course, about 2/3 of the way through the film, is you discover that their daughter was someone they had kidnapped, right?
Yeah.
And the scene
So
when they kidnap
rough.
her is one of the most harrowing scenes I've seen in a movie, just because of that kid's mom, like screaming, like running, the desperation in her eyes.
It's a horrible thing they did. It's a
So
horrible thing they did.
so deeply
And-
upsetting. So deeply
Yep.
upsetting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I guess did you ever react? Like, what was your reaction to that when you watched it?
I mean, I was crying, and I, I was. It's a shock because, I mean, it's a twist in a really clever way, but also, it's one of those ones where it throws. You start to question how you feel about these characters
Yes.
and now what they've done, and it completely it moves the axis on which you are viewing the movie, right?
Yep.
You are watching this horror movie where you're rooting for your protagonists, and all of a sudden you realize they caused the horror, right?
Right.
They are the root cause of every horrible thing that's happening to them, and it really is just an expression of this darkness inside them, that. And it's a very powerful moment and a very bold thing to do to your protagonists, to make them villains in a certain way. I mean, obviously it's a complicated moment and a complicated situation and a horrible one, but I that's when I really thought this movie, it went from being like effective and interesting and creepy and the look and the feel, and it was compelling and all these things. It was already a good movie, but it elevated to a moment where I was like, wow, this is really
Right.
intense.
It was a
and
You
great-
just didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
is the
it was a
thing, too,
great
because-
twist. A great twist.
Yeah.
And what I like about this movie is that, well, one of the things I want to get to is that the ghost is a stand-in for a concept, right? It's a metaphor, right? And it's very similar to the Babadook, both in terms of the fact that in both this movie and the Babadook, the monster actually represents a real-life concept. In the Babadook, it was grief. In this one, I don't know what you describe it, guilt, I guess.
Yeah.
At like
Absolutely,
the
guilt, yeah.
atrocities that they've committed, right? And in
Yeah.
both the Babadook and this movie, they kind of learn how to deal with it, which is you can't kill it. You can't just make it go away. You can't escape it. You have to face it, right?
Well, that's kind of what happens in Relic also.
Yeah.
It's similar to that. And in the horror, the horror of the grandmother is her dementia, and at the end of that as well is
Well,
the
here, are we
embracing
going
of-
to spoil Relic right now? Is that what's happening?
Well, yeah, sorry.
So if let's not spoil Relic. There's actually
Mhm.
someone wrote in an incredible email about Relic actually that we didn't get a chance to read, but like
Yeah,
maybe we
I
can do it in
remember
an
that.
After Dark. But basically, like one of the great things about Relic is this idea of dementia makes people that you love scary to other people.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Right?
right.
And like that's a central concept of that movie. But yeah, these are all movies that basically take real life things that we deal with, real life emotional tragedies that we deal with, and make them into like kind of supernatural horrors that are
Right.
visually very interesting. And I think all of them are kind of very, very good in their own way. One
Mhm.
other thing I want to shout out about this movie, His House, is it just does a really good job of making this house into a terrifying location. I mean, there's a scene when he walks into this room and the wallpaper comes down, and this is like the
Yeah.
loudest wallpaper peeling I've ever heard in a movie. It just like comes out.
Well,
I'm like, I jumped in my seat because of how
It doesn't peel like wallpaper. It peels
Right.
like skin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like it's really effective the way in which the house becomes this place of this location of horror where you never know what's going to happen, but like it's like the house itself is turning against you, right? This location, this place, this life that they're trying to build for themselves has turned against them. It's fascinating. So,
Mhm.
Devindra, any thoughts on the ending of this movie?
I mean, I think it's incredibly powerful, and yeah, it did remind me a lot of the Babadook. There's so much to say because I feel like I was still reeling from the twist too, and seeing how they're gonna deal with it. And I don't know if the movie fully, they will have to fight this demon and live with what they did. I feel like I would have liked something a little more about them acknowledging what they did and the horrors of what they did. Whereas I think by the end, it's mainly just we gotta confront this ghost. We gotta deal with this
It kind of
problem.
like they
Yeah.
kind of have this conversation, and then it kind of cuts to them kind of
Yeah.
being visited by the social services people again.
Mhm.
And that whole subplot I actually thought was really great because
Oh yeah.
here's what's great about that subplot because I felt like all those people being pretty reasonable. Like they're kind of quote unquote the villains in the sense that they're unreasonable and the like you wanting to relate to the protagonist and root for them. You
Right,
want
right,
them
right.
to like, hey, please understand these guys are dealing with like ghosts and things you can't possibly understand. You want them to be understanding, but at the same time,
They're
it's like
just bureaucrats.
yeah, they're just they're bureaucrats. They're trying to do their job. They're actually like somewhat compassionate, in my opinion at least. And
Oh, I mean, never trust Matt Smith, right? Like whenever you see that guy pop up, because like he's telling them it's all right, and then he immediately goes back and reports them. Which is, I get it.
Yeah.
It's also tough what they're doing, but there's a layer of condescension throughout the entire system.
100%,
that
100%.
I
And-
think is an important element of what makes this an inhospitable world for them.
Well, that's
but
what's
yeah,
great
and-
is it illustrates kind of, one of the things that's been really a flashpoint in debate in our culture is like the concept of privilege, right? And like
Mhm.
many people reject the concept of white privilege outright. Like if their lives are not going well, like white privilege is a concept that cannot be grasped and is offensive. And
Mhm.
what I think a movie like this shows is like some components of the idea of privilege, which is that many people never have to deal with the stuff these characters are dealing with, right? They just don't need to deal with like living in a shitty place and like not being able to have friends over and like all these not having a job, all these obstacles that these characters face.
Not being able to have a job, but only getting like a pittance
Yeah.
to live on
Yeah,
every week. Like,
So I
Yeah.
liked that
Or
the
how about
movie.
trying to get into a bus when a jeep full of machine gun toting,
Yeah,
war criminals is driving
mhm.
it? And that's something most people don't have to deal with either.
exactly.
yeah.
So
What
I
would
think
you do in that situation? To get in.
Yeah.
I think the
think
movie,
the-
it does a great job of kind of showing the challenges that people have to go through to even get to the point where they can have a life, in a country like the UK. So, anyway, sorry, Devindra, I'm stepping a little bit on what you're saying. Do you have any further thoughts?
No,
on
no,
the
no.
ending?
I think you're absolutely right, and I will say it's just like it is that layer of condescension that just really got to me because it's the whole system, right? Because ostensibly the refugee system is built and the asylum system is built to take care of these people that come in, but every person, every single step of the way is just like I gotta fucking deal with these people. Okay. Oh, you got a house. lucky you. And it's just like it is that whole layer of things. Matt Smith is like, I think at the beginning when they first meet him, it's like, okay, he's genuinely trying. He's gonna, when he reports them, he's doing his job. But like when Sope's character goes to them and says like, I can't live in this house, and the guys in the back are just saying, well, it's bigger than my house. Probably is. Your house probably also has like, running electricity, and it is not just in that, doesn't just look like a hellhole. Like there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like how complex this movie is. Like there is nobody's just one thing, and I feel like that's my favorite kind of movie.
Agreed.
Yeah, that feeling really starts in that first sequence when they're sitting in front of that panel,
Yeah.
and he's like, we're good people, and he's like, I don't
Yeah.
care.
I don't
I
give
don't
a
care.
crap. He's like Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. He's like, I don't
Yeah.
care. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love the visual at the end of them, like, there's this kind of interesting series of cuts at the end of the movie where it's like first they're surrounded by the ghosts,
Mhm.
and then the ghosts are on the other side of them, and it's like
Oh, yeah, it's so powerful.
It's very powerful, and it's like you have to live with these ghosts, but that you don't need to be like dominated by them, but you
Mhm.
must
Mhm.
confront them in some way.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful. It's haunting, and it leaves no easy answers. So, any
Mhm.
other thoughts? I think we all really appreciated this one. So,
Yeah.
great choice. But yeah, oh, I mean, the one thing I will also comment on is this is a relentless movie.
Yes.
There is virtually no levity to be found whatsoever, right? Like it's some movies kind
Brutal.
of balance the
It's
tone.
when he goes
right?
to the church and he sings a soccer song. I think that's a little bit of it.
Oh yeah,
Maybe.
That's it.
That's the
So
one
when
moment.
the guy's like, "You one of them damn refugees? Come here. I got some shit for you." But that's
you think it's gonna be you think that's gonna turn out badly, and it's like, oh no, he actually did have some shit for him. That's nice.
Give him a beer.
Yeah.
Cool.
I do think it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting, like to reflect on. If a movie like this had more levity, would that make its horror more impactful? I'm not saying I don't have an answer one way or the other, but
I don't know how you do it with a story like this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, some horror movies mix in a great deal of humor with their horror, and this movie does not do that at all. It is
But I
just
also think
nonstop.
it's like
right?
it's a tight 90 minutes, right? It's
Yeah?
it's a
So
you know,
tight.
It respects your time. It
doesn't-
respects your time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't make room for that stuff, and it is brutal. It's a brutal experience. It is harrowing, but it is it trims the fat too. There's no excess anywhere.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our review of His House, streaming right now on Netflix. Oh, one last shout out. The woman who plays Nyagak's mom, Lola May, is the actress. And I'm pretty sure that that like wild look in her eyes as she's running after the bus has seared its way into my memory. Like, I don't think I'm going to
Man,
be able to forget
yeah.
that.
Yep.
It's
Talk
just
about
this
a memorable moment.
this look of this mom who has like lost her child and like probably will never see her again. It's just yeah.
Dude,
I'm-
Every
mean,
parent's
they-
worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They take the kid, and then the kid dies. Like that.
yeah.
That series of events. Like, you killed someone else's kid. It's dude. It's like
It's it's incomprehensible. So anyway, Lola May was the actress. Just wanted to give her a shout out. But that's our conversation, discussion, review of His House. Check it out on Netflix. It's great. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be discussing next week. In the meantime, find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from AdamWarlock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker and YouTuber Kyle Hillinger. Check out his YouTube videos. And our weekly plugs music comes from Noah Ross. This episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Thanks to all of our patrons at patreon.com/filmpodcast for supporting us. This week, the After Dark will be about Brandon Cronenberg's movie Possessor. Patrons will get that episode first, so check that out.
Cronenberg.
Cronenberg, I think is the pronunciation.
Brandon.
Cranenberg, right? Next week on the podcast, we're going to be discussing Mank, the new David Fincher movie that's going to be on Netflix. And what's so funny about that, Devendra?
A lot of things to pronounce over here. How are we going to pronounce Mank?
There's nothing about Mank. And for the After Dark, we are probably going to be discussing some combination of Citizen Kane, which is relevant to Mank, and or new video game consoles that are coming out next week. So
It's a perfect sandwich. That's
So-
peanut butter and jelly right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
two great tastes that go great together, or some combination of them. I can't guarantee what percentage will go to which one. So that's what's in store for the podcast and the After Dark next week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you very soon. All right, Jeff. I did the MP3 this week just because I knew we'd
boy.
have to speed on to
Okay.
Look at you.
the After Dark. So
I predict you will get zero feedback about it.
I think you might
I'll
be,
hear it. Okay.
you might be right, but
I'll
yes,
hear the difference.
yeah. I can taste the difference, Jeff. Okay, I can taste the difference
That's all that
between.
matters.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. Be right back.
Okay, yeah, I'll do.
Okay, I'm back.